guys? This is Phil, the MMA dude, back with the Split Decision podcast, episode number 14, here with my brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, who is currently lathering on huge amounts of chapstick. It's very disgusting. What's going on?
This is just going to be a running shtick, huh?
I guess I'm going to take it as far as the joke will go, and then I'll take it past it where it's not even funny remotely, which I think we're already at.
Right. Well, happy to be here, man. Happy to talk about the biggest card of the year so far, in my opinion, UFC 235.
Yeah, absolutely. So a quick rundown, guys, of what we've got to discuss today. As Fikey touched on, we have got a huge card, but first, we're going to do a quick UFC Prague recap. Then we're going to move on to UFC 235's preview. I agree with Fight Geek. I think it's the biggest card of the year so far. We're going to jump into my favorite segment, listener questions, and even touch on some breaking news. There's been a few news stories that have been very interesting in the past few days, and I'm going to start off the question that I always ask Fight Geek at the top of every episode with one of those newsworthy articles. So, Fight Geek, as you know, the main event for UFC 236 has been announced as an interim lightweight title fight between Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier. Now, here is my question to you. Many people are very upset that Tony Ferguson is not in the fight, although I was told that he was offered the fight against Max and turned it down. Let me ask you this. A lot of people are split on this. Many are saying, good for Tony. He already won the interim. This is a waste of time. That's what I'm seeing a lot of on Twitter. Did Tony, by turning down this fight, get closer to a title shot or further away?
Wow, great question. I'm on that side of thinking that thinks that why would Tony have to fight for an interim belt again when he's already won the interim belt? And did they ever strip him? Was
Yes.
there ever okay, they did strip him.
Yes.
And now they want him to fight for the interim belt again?
Yes.
Even though he was never granted the title shot previously?
Right.
It's a rhetorical question. Obviously, I don't know if he got closer or not to a title shot, but my thinking is that he is going to be the next man who fights Khabib. Still, I believe that. Even though everything we're hearing points the other way, but I just can't imagine that fight not happening when it comes to deciding who the best fighter is in the 155-pound division. That's part of the reason I'm just not a huge fan of this fight, Poirier versus Max for the interim. Not that I'm not a fan of the fight, the matchup, and the action. I just don't think it's the appropriate time for A, Max to jump up, and B, who he'll be fighting for the interim. He hasn't established himself in the 155-pound division, which is the most backloaded, log-jammed position in the UFC. There's probably two guys in that division established that deserve a title shot over him clearly, which is Tony and Dustin. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of talking in circles here, but actually to take a step back, I would say it depends on who wins, because if Max were to win, which I would favor him right now, maybe Khabib would fight Max as an interim and 145-pound champ, I think. So that would be an interesting fight. I do not think that Dustin winning means that he will fight Khabib next necessarily.
Okay.
So I don't know, man. It's a mess. I'll let you take a stab at it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I thought you said something very interesting towards the beginning of that, where you said that you think that when Khabib comes back, he is fighting Tony next. And I find that very interesting. Now, you could be right. I think that everyone agrees, diehard fans agree that Tony is certainly the most deserving. But I see two problems there. The first one being they just made an interim lightweight title fight against two people that, do not include Tony Ferguson. The interims already have a very bad reputation from last year as sort of being complete joke titles. I would think that the UFC wants to try and honor these interim belts that they're doing at 236 just to try to fight back on that a little bit. But again, it's the UFC, you never know. And then here's the other reason that I think it's so hard to picture Tony fighting Khabib next. I agree with you, by the way, that if Poirier were to win, that there would be a much stronger chance that they ignore Poirier's interim belt and just give the fight to Tony. But here's that X factor. The X factor is Conor McGregor. Because if McGregor goes and he fights Cowboy and wins, there is no way that they don't make Khabib versus Conor 2. There's simply too much money in it. So it's really hard for me to see a way that this was not a catastrophic, dare I say, career-ending decision by Tony. And what I mean by career-ending, what I mean by that is, of course, he's going to continue to be competitive and fight. Of course he will. But I don't see him getting a
let me ask you
title
this,
shot.
not to interrupt,
Yeah.
but do you think Dustin played his hand perfectly by asking for his release and then being given this shot? Meaning that, did he leverage his situation in a way that he got this even though he's a little less deserving than Tony?
Yeah, good question. I don't think so at all. I think you're giving Dustin a little too much credit. I think it was as simple as this. I think they tried to make Holloway versus Tony. Tony turned it down, and then they said, shoot, we need another person. Dustin, obviously the next most deserving, of course. Many people could argue that Dustin is more deserving than Max. That's a different conversation. I think it was that simple.
Within the 155-pound division, clearly Dustin is more established and deserving than Max at this time.
Yeah, sure. But, yeah. And again, I think this is where I get into a lot of debates on Twitter, a little bit with you, but more on Twitter with, Twitter folk. A lot of people on Twitter, and they're very smart, and they're very diehard MMA fans, and they want to do what is fair. And I agree.
Right. And that's what I want to do. And that's why I said Tony Ferguson will fight Khabib next. But that's more in my head in a perfect world. I don't believe that'll honestly happen.
Right.
But I do want to float this out as a crazy idea. Tony Ferguson might just get sick of it and go to 170. Is he an interesting player there someday? Because he's already talked about being willing to go there.
I think that didn't he tweet that he could make 145, or was that, am I mistaken, and that was Dustin?
I believe he did make that tweet, but
yeah.
I'm not sure if he was being serious or not.
I would just think, just thinking out loud here, obviously Tony's amazing. You can't say enough good things about him, but he does get knocked down just about every fight by 55ers. I would think that the welterweights would really, really damage him.
Right, but at 170, perhaps he'd be a little quicker versus the competition, and he's already got an established gas tank. So, he does. If someone like Dos Anjos can have as much success as he's had, and Cerrone had some pretty good success, you don't think that a guy who is probably superior to both of them in Ferguson would go up and have some success?
Sure, but okay, you named Cowboy having some success at welterweight.
Well, I'm talking about 155ers that moved to 170.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm saying they had mediocre success. Cowboy
ripped off like 3 in a row when he went there. I think he got stopped by Robbie Lawler or something, or not stopped, but his momentum was halted in a couple fights. But he made some good big noise when he first switched, in my opinion. Yeah,
and I'm sure that Tony could make some big noise. I have no doubt. But does Tony want to make some noise, or does Tony want to be champ?
Well, does Tony want to fight? Because at this point, he's fighting backwards. Who's his best option? To fight Al Iaquinta?
Yeah.
I think that's a backward step for him. And if he's not willing to take the interim championship fight, I don't think he's going to take an Al Iaquinta fight.
Right. And we could go on about this forever.
Right.
The last thing that I will say about it, and I'll let you have the final word, the last thing I'm going to say about it is that I completely understand Tony's thinking, saying this isn't right, this isn't just, this isn't fair.
It's idiotic. He's already done it once and was not rewarded. So there's literally no reason for him to do it right now
Yeah, and there's so many people on Twitter saying, I totally agree with you, Tony. There's no reason for you to do this. You've already won the belt. Guess what, guys? This isn't a fair world. This is Dana White's world. Welcome to the UFC. I mean, have you guys been paying attention? I mean, come on. This isn't a fair game where, the most deserving has to fight next. No. No, Dana will never forget this. I can only imagine how mad he is that Tony turned it down. And he's not going to give Tony a title shot anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. And so that's my final take on it.
Okay, yeah, well, you got to quit asking such difficult questions off the bat, man. Come on.
Hey, we got to keep it interesting here. Okay, all right. So moving on to the UFC Prague recap. Let's start with Thiago Santos defeating Jan Blachowicz. And by the way, it's not Blachowicz, as we were saying last episode. I think it's Blachowicz.
Are you sure?
I'm listening.
I don't know.
I'm going by the announcers.
Okay. Well, it is the first time I've ever been wrong, but thanks for pointing it out.
I had to bring up number one. The first time I
had
to
highlight.
All right,
so what did you think of the performance? We both picked the fight wrong. I think it's clear that Thiago Santos is just an absolute savage. I was really impressed with the way he actually tempered his pace and fought a really measured fight and found that opening. And when he landed it, he detonated. Jan went down, and it was pretty clear he took a lot of damage on the ground. It looked like, was it Herb Dean in that fight?
I think so.
I think it was pretty clear that Jan was turtling up and giving, pretty much conceding the fight, and he took a lot of hammer strikes. So
you're talking about Santos giving hammer strikes to Jan?
On the ground, after he dropped him. There was a lot of them. I mean, on TV it seemed like, it wasn't the worst stoppage in the world, but worth noting. I guess the big question of the weekend is what to do next with Santos. I posted a question on Twitter, and I think the options were wait for a title, fight Gustafsson, fight Corey Anderson, or fight Luke Rockhold. I think the poll question, Luke Rockhold was actually winning, which I found interesting, but what do you think?
Thank you for asking. And ladies and gentlemen, we have yet more evidence that Fight Geek has me muted and does not ever, under any circumstances, look at my Twitter, even though I always look at his. I always contribute to his. He never looks at mine. That's okay. That's all right.
These are all lies, man. There's I have a very busy Twitter feed.
He's too busy. He's too busy for me. I see. Okay. All right. He's big time now. So anyway, that's all right. I posted about this shortly after the fight. I think seconds after the fight. And to me, it's clear as day. You have got to you've got to give Santos the next title shot. And, I definitely think you've got to give Santos the next title shot. And here's where it gets really interesting. I don't want to get too far into the hills here, but here's where it gets really interesting is if Jones wins. Obviously, Jones is favored to win. Jones-Santos, to me, is a very interesting fight. I think Santos can definitely challenge.
Yeah, it definitely presents some of the intrigue that the Rumble versus John Jones fight presented. I think that Thiago Santos is the closest thing we've seen to Rumble Johnson in the 205-pound division. He's very athletic. It's amazing how much different he looks at 205. I think he was actually the bigger man.
Yeah.
Versus Jan, and he's a former 185er. So physically, he's very imposing, and he has some very good, lateral movement. He's a pretty athletic guy, and with that kind of punching power, he poses threats to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And then here is where things get a little weird. And when I say weird, I mean that in a good way, of course. Things get a little weird because if you recall, Lionheart's last fight at middleweight was against Santos, and it was fight of the night, and Smith lost. So if Smith somehow pulls a Matt Serra and wins this fight against Jones, do you do the Jones instant rematch as, I'm sure history would dictate and assume, or do you do that Santos-Lionheart 2 fight, which has a humongous story behind it? And then before I let you answer, I want to quickly say that I stole this question from the listener questions from Jim Asoon, and that is at Jim_ASSOUN. He asked that question. What's your answer?
Great question. Refresh my memory one more time. Sorry.
Lionheart, if Lionheart
Oh, right. Yeah, no, if Lionheart beats John Jones is getting an immediate rematch.
But what about the Santos Lionheart storyline?
That is not a bigger storyline than John Jones taking his first competitive loss and then having a chance to avenge it.
All right, fine. Well, I agree with you, so that's annoying.
All right. Move on. Sorry, Jim.
Jim, I thought it was a very interesting idea. I wouldn't be opposed to it. But anyways, moving on. Stefan Struve did his little half retirement. I thought it would have been a lot. He was so close to having it actually be emotional and nice, and then he kept saying, "But it's not for sure, guys. It's not for sure," as he left his gloves in the cage. I thought that kind of took away from it. And that fight was very mediocre, not much to talk about. There were a whole lot of mediocre fights on the card, frankly, but I did want to touch on Peter Yan defeating John Dodson by unanimous decision. I thought it was interesting that all three judges had it 30-27 for Yan. What did you make of the fight, and were you impressed?
I was impressed. I'm continually impressed with Yan just based on his overall fight IQ, the fact that he pushes forward, his aggression. He's obviously a creative striker. John Dodson's a tricky guy to fight. He may not be, the best fighter in the world, but he is tricky. He's incredibly quick. He comes from a great camp. He has former, title challenging experience. So that's not an easy guy to go in there and just mop the floor with. John Dodson's been a top 5 to 8 in his weight class for the last 5 to 6 years. So definitely a good performance. I saw it 30-27, even though I think Dodson landed a few good shots and pushed Yan back a few times, not many, but Yan just moving forward, landing a lot of stuff on Dodson. I think it was a pretty clear and clean win for a guy who's 4-0 now versus, like I said, a 2-time title challenger.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was very well said. What made the fight strange for me was that Yan got dropped once in both of the first 2 rounds. He was dropped.
True, but Yan is coming forward, engaging, and John Dodson's lightning quick still. So,
yeah,
absolutely. He was able to recover, and then he wasn't ever detoured from his game plan. He got right back to it after, he recovered.
Yep.
Did he not?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I guess my final takeaway from Peter Yan was that I was very impressed. I think he's definitely going to be top 5, but it's very difficult for me to see him having serious success against the top 5, and I'll tell you.
Did you see? So, yeah. Demetrius Johnson has fought John Dodson twice, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Did they both go to decision?
I think so.
I'm not positive. I think they did. So if Demetrius Johnson can't finish John Dodson in 10 rounds, you expect...
It's a different division. We're talking about flyweight versus bantamweight.
I guess that's true. But yeah, what I'm saying is John Dodson's a very difficult guy to get your hands on, and he's extremely quick. He's super athletic. He does like American Ninja Warrior. He's an amazing athlete. So it's not an easy guy to go in there and style on.
Yeah, I guess what concerned me about Jan's performance is that he was actually landing a ton. I mean, he was landing a ton.
Yeah, Jan lands all kinds of variety. He's a great striker.
But did you see John Dodson? He looked like he'd just come out of, Harvard Law School after studying.
No, he didn't.
He looked fine. I mean, Jan has 0 power. 0.
Ooh, don't say that. Don't say that.
Okay, you think match him up with Volkanovski, you're going to be taking Jan to the morgue. Forget the hospital. Oh, wait, featherweight.
Yeah, let's not do this again.
Okay,
Moving
let's
on.
not do this. All right. Put him against. All right, you know what? Put Jan against Aljamain Sterling. Seriously.
I don't think that's a horrible matchup, honestly.
Put him against Garbrandt.
I think Aljamain Sterling would have his hands full with the striking of Peter Yan.
Okay.
I think John Dodson's footwork, especially in his striking, is way better than Aljamain Sterling's. He's incredibly quick.
Agreed.
So he's much harder to hit. Anyways,
what do you think of? Okay. What do you think of Peter Yan versus Cody Garbrandt?
I love that.
Dude, Garbrandt would kill him.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't know that. Garbrandt gets hit too, and his chin is completely suspect at this point. He's coming off 2 stoppage losses. So,
darn it.
I mean, you can't just be like, Cody Garbrandt's going to mop the floor with anybody. This guy's coming off catastrophic level losses. Yes, he's still a great prospect, but let's temper our enthusiasm here.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, he went from 2 title fights to Pedro Munoz. That should tell you where Cody Garbrandt is mentally.
Yeah, agreed. I guess you're right. I just wasn't blown away by Peter Yan. That's all I wanted. I wasn't blown away.
Fair enough. It wasn't, it wasn't a night-stealing performance by any means, but it is a great win versus a 2-time title challenger and a guy who has a win over the champion in the division. Still, Dodson boasts that knockout over TJ.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know last point on this, doesn't Peter Yan remind you a bit of Alexander Volkanovski? I know they're in different divisions, but he's kind of like the bantamweight Volkanovski. He just comes forward, he takes damage, and he doesn't care.
I think he has a little more variety in the striking and doesn't wrestle as much. But yeah, I could kind of see what you're saying there.
Okay, all right. Okay, so UFC Prague, what else did you want to talk about?
Nothing super exciting off the top of my head.
All right. Well,
there was a last-second knockout of Carlo Pedersoli by, Grant?
Oh, thank you for mentioning that, because I tweeted about that. Thank you.
Well, Grant was losing that fight until he landed that last exchange, so that was a really exciting finish.
Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't believe it. That actual the strike that really put Pedersoli down was unbelievable. It sent his mouth guard flying 20 feet in the air. It was crazy.
And then he got him unconscious with 1 second, a true KO. So I think a couple episodes where you're talking about how you'd think it's rare, these last-second stoppages, but we're seeing a lot of these lately, and I like it. It's exciting.
It's funny you mentioned that. I thought of that exact thing when that happened. So, another 4:59 stoppage. Okay, so is that it for UFC Prague?
Yeah, let's jump into the upcoming card this week, Fight Week, UFC 235.
Yeah. Oh man. I'll just start off by saying this. I am truly stoked for UFC 235. I definitely think it's the best card of the year so far. Fingers crossed that everything stays together. I think it's just amazing. I've even liked the UFC promotional material for it in the videos. I think they've been doing something different and it's been working. But let's go ahead and we'll start at the top of the card. And I want to switch off on who's going to predict first, but I will give you the honors of predicting John Bones Jones versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. How do you see it going down?
Well, I like the fight. I think it's going to be super entertaining. But without giving too much, I think we both know what John Jones and Anthony Smith do well. Anthony Smith is a blood and guts type fighter, wants to get in the clinch. He's violent with his elbows. John Jones has got an enormous wingspan, an incredible fight IQ, cardio, wrestling, probably the best all-around fighter we've ever seen. I'm going to go ahead and take John Jones by 3rd round TKO.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And I see John doing what John does. He'll come out, he'll control the distance, he'll do his kicks to the knees, and he'll do all of his little tricks. I think he'll wear Anthony Smith down, and I think Smith will eventually get to the ground. He may be able to survive through the second, but if he gets taken down in the third, which I do think he will eventually go down as his cardio drains, I think John will finish him from the top. TKO, ground and pound, 3rd round.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I've thought about this fight a lot because I think, as you know, I am a very, very big Lionheart Smith fan. Have been for many years now, actually. So really, really tough to put emotions aside on this one. Without going into too much detail, this is my birthday weekend. I will be having a birthday celebration during 235, very much, watching the fights during that. And the only reason I even say that is I cannot think of a better gift than to have Lionheart knock Jones out. So if you're listening, big man upstairs, nothing would be better as a birthday gift.
You would love that. That'd be your birthday gift of all time.
That'd be my birthday gift of all. I'd never need another birthday gift. No, but
that's why we watch. There's certainly a chance that Anthony wins, but everything's pointing to John Jones winning. I think that's being honest.
Yeah. So in regards to my formal prediction, what I keep thinking is if Anthony can just find a way, somehow to keep the fight standing, then he is in with a serious chance. But John is extremely smart, and he is not going to let Smith just keep it standing and get into a street fight. He ain't going to do it. I think we both know that Jones is going to take him down, and Anthony's ground game is mediocre at best. I've got John Jones defeating Anthony Lionheart Smith by second round submission.
Submission, okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. It's going to be fun. I think just a different opponent, not Gustafsson, not DC, just a different storyline of Anthony Lionheart Smith is something to get excited about. It's not a fight we've seen. It's new blood. So, I just like seeing these new matchups. So, looking forward to the fight.
Yep.
That brings us to an unbelievable matchup in the co-main, which is Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. I'll go ahead and let you have first dibs on this one. Who do you got?
Yeah, as a big fan of the Chosen One, I'm admittedly, a little worried about this because Kamaru is not a joke. Kamaru is a very serious opponent, and he's tough, and he's a grinder, and he's strong, and he's no joke. Again, he's a very serious and worthy opponent for Tyron Woodley. Having said that, I think that Usman's going to do what he does, which is, come forward, push the pace, try to pressure Woodley, try to push him up against the fence. And I think he'll take some shots coming in, some solid shots, but I think he'll be able to tough it out for a little bit, possibly even win the first round. I would not be surprised if Usman wins the first round. But eventually, I think that him coming forward and eating those strikes that Woodley loves to throw when he's getting pressured is going to be a little too much for Kamaru Usman. And I see this ending with a Woodley TKO victory in the third round.
Nice. Well, I see it a little different. I think we have two guys that are going to nullify what each other's do in a lot of senses. So I'm actually taking Woodley by decision. I think that it would not be a big surprise to see these guys kind of staring at each other and there being lulls in the action because, Usman can say whatever he wants, but he's not going to go in there and march down Woodley. You can say that, but Till said that, and then Till got dropped in 30 seconds. Robbie Lawler got dropped in 20 seconds. You have to respect his punching power. He's not going to go in there and get him on the ground right away. I think we've discussed in the past, Woodley has arguably the greatest takedown defense statistically in UFC history. Mm-hmm. So they are going to be staring at each other a lot. I think we've seen that Woodley's extremely smart and is not going to put himself in positions to be countered dangerously. And I don't think Usman is going to feel as comfortable as he thinks he does in the pocket with Woodley. So I'm taking Woodley because I believe he has better overall skills, although somewhat similar to Usman's skills. I think he's obviously the better fighter, the champion. I'm taking him by decision.
Got it. Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Moving on. Funky Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler. Who you got?
This is a much debated topic, and I mean, it's funny that most people are always saying that Ben Askren didn't deserve to be in the UFC. He wasn't this good, yada yada, and now he's here fighting Robbie Lawler, and a lot of people are actually picking him to win, which is surprising. I think it's just too much for him to bite off in his UFC debut. Robbie Lawler's coming off a layoff. I think Robbie Lawler, with his defensive wrestling and arguably the best striking that Ben Askren has ever faced outside of practice, will win by decision.
Ooh, interesting. We disagree. We definitely disagree. I think that Ben Askren is just a little too smart, just a little too crafty for Robbie Lawler. And remember, guys, it's worth pointing out, Lawler is not, at his peak. Obviously, you know that, Fight Geek. I'm just saying, Lawler is not the Lawler who...
But Ben Askren's not at his peak either. He's in his mid to late 30s, isn't he?
Yeah.
Or no, he's like 33 or 34. Either way, he's not in his prime either.
Is he only 33? I have to look it up. He's definitely not too old. He's 34. Oh, wow, you're right. Okay, I thought he was a little older. Yeah, so, he's 34. I mean, the
But he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him.
Right. No, I understand. I think that it's definitely a very dangerous fight for Askren. I mean, he's already said as much, but very, very hard. I mean, it's not very hard to see Lawler catching him. I simply don't think it will happen. I think that Askren is going to win a very boring unanimous decision by just wrestling Lawler down and keeping him there. I don't think it's going to be a fun fight. I don't think it's going to be an exciting fight. I think it's going to be a boring unanimous decision from Askren.
Fair enough. # split decision. Go ahead. What's the next one?
All right. The next one is Zane versus Torres.
Is it Willie Zhang or Zhang Willie?
So... I believe, in American pronunciations, you say the last name last.
Right. Well, that's why I'm asking.
I think it's Willie Zhang.
Willie Zhang. Okay. Well, I'm taking Willie Zhang over Tisha Torres by decision.
Oh, man. I had Zhang, and I thought that was the whole little, ace in my sleeve.
That was your the 18-1.
Well, Tisha Torres is, by the way, Tisha Torres is favored in Vegas. She is favored.
Well, Vegas obviously
wrong.
Doesn't know what they're talking about. But
yeah, I agree.
I would put money on Zhang if that's the truth. I think that she possesses all kinds of problems for Tisha Torres. I do think Torres is crafty enough, quick enough, and defensive enough to where it'll be a decision. I'm taking Zhang by decision.
Interesting. I'm taking Zhang by second round submission.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Tisha Torres offers a little too much off of her back and with her defensive game plan. I don't see that happening, but glad we disagree on something.
Yeah. Hey, we disagreed a little bit.
And that brings us to Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munoz, correct?
Yes, exactly. Is it my turn?
Go ahead. Yep,
all right.
It's your turn.
All right, so I think this is a really good fight for No Love to get back on the horse and kind of build up his confidence. Pedro Munoz is no joke, of course, but I believe that as long as Cody goes in there focused and relaxed, meaning that he doesn't do some idiotic, I didn't have sex with my gorgeous wife for 4 months plan, and I hope that's appropriate. Sorry, but I don't know what he was thinking. As long as he's not a weirdo about it, then I think that Garbrandt should get a first round stoppage. End of the first round, knockout.
Yeah, I see the same thing if Cody's right, but I want to pose this question to you: what if he loses? What are the stakes right now?
For Garbrandt?
Yeah.
Everything.
If he loses to Pedro Munoz this weekend, is the shine completely gone off his prospect shine?
The truth is, look, if you're asking if I think he'll be cut, absolutely not.
No, obviously MMA fans are fickle. If a guy has, people still talk about TJ Dillashaw's loss to Dodson 5 years ago. But you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
These are forever going to be losses that are within the discussion of your legacy. So, is he set back, super duper big time by a loss here, or is he still with? Yeah, I mean, obviously.
I think it'd be crazy to say otherwise. Tremendous. It'd be this is for all intents and purposes for Cody and for what I know that he wants to accomplish in his career. This is a must-win fight.
It's a do or die. That's what I'm getting at for the relevancy of his future title campaigns.
Yup. Hopefully he's not trying to use any of those very questionable practices from the lead up to his previous fight.
Yeah, okay. Moving on. This next one is super interesting. Might have fight of the night written all over it. It's Jeremy Stephens versus Zabit Magomed-Sharipov. And I think it's my turn.
It is your turn.
I think Zabit is going to submit Jeremy Stephens in the second round.
Ooh, a submission.
I think his length and his long limbs, I think he'll wrap up Stephens. They'll get to the ground, and I think he'll be able to pull something off. I think Zabit is extremely slick. We've already seen that. Not sure where Jeremy Stephens is mentally after, his last loss. So I'm taking Zabit here. I think he's going to have a signature win over a name opponent, and I'm taking him by second round submission.
Cool. I see this fight. I have this weird feeling, I have zero evidence to back it up, that Jeremy Stephens is going to come out with a little bit of fire in him. I think he's pissed. A little bit. The guy's full of fire every time he fights. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit more. That doesn't mean that I'm picking him to win, though. I see this being a little bit like Zabit's fight against, I believe it was Kyle Bochniak. Am I saying that right?
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be like a Zabit versus Kyle Bochniak fight where they're both just slinging leather, just throwing, and Zabit will get the better of Jeremy in a unanimous decision.
Really? I mean, I can see that as well.
Yeah.
Definitely think that there's a big length advantage, obviously reach advantage. So I think Zabit will be able to stay away from those big bombs that Jeremy throws.
Okay. Yeah, fair.
All right.
Moving on.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So we have Misha Cirkunov versus Johnny Walker in the light heavyweight division. Now,
another fun fight.
It's a fun fight. I've been thinking a lot about this fight because I think as people who are regular listeners to the podcast might note, last week or last episode I was really saying, how far can Walker go? Well, he can go as far as Misha Cirkunov, and that's it. But I have done a 180. I've done a 180, okay? I reserve that right, and I am playing it right now. I've got Johnny Walker knocking out Misha Cirkunov in the first round.
Well, welcome aboard the hype train, because I agree. I think he's going to knock Misha Cirkunov out in the first round and catapult himself into a huge discussion as a title challenger and potentially could fight Santos next. Think about that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I'm just cringing because I love Johnny Walker, and I can't, even if he wins this fight, don't you want to slow him down?
Cirkunov has been stopped twice in his career in short order. Once by... Man, I was looking at this earlier today.
No, I was just looking at this too.
Once by Volkan Ozdemir and once by... Who else knocked him out in the first?
I'm looking it up right.
I think it was Glover Teixeira,
wasn't it? It was Glover Teixeira.
So I think Johnny Walker offers quite a bit more athleticism and explosion in his striking than both of those guys. So I think he's going to give Misha big problems.
Yeah, absolutely. The one devil's advocate, aspect that I'll say is that if Johnny Walker doesn't take him out fast, he's got a serious danger of getting submitted because Misha is going to...
I know, but Johnny Walker's a Brazilian. You think his jiu-jitsu's that bad?
I don't know. You know what? I don't know. We haven't seen
I think that's an assumption you can make, that his jiu-jitsu's not horrible.
Is that an assumption we can make?
Isn't jiu-jitsu like the national sport along with soccer in Brazil? Guy's probably been doing jiu-jitsu since he's a kid, whether it's world class or not. I'm sure it's better than ours.
Is it better than me? Is it better than Misha's?
I don't know. I guess we're gonna find out potentially.
Yep, exactly. Okay, moving on. Stayman versus Perez. Who you got?
I'm taking Perez here. No real distinct reason. I think it's a push of a fight. Both guys are fairly good fighters. Stayman coming off a loss to Aljo. Perez is actually, I think, on a 4-fight winning streak. Kind of a Mexican-style fighter, moves forward, blood and guts, takes shots, gives shots. I'm taking Perez by unanimous decision.
All right, interesting. Yeah, I think this is a really tough fight to call, but we do disagree. I have Stayman winning this by split decision.
Is it Stayman or Stayman?
I don't know. You said Stayman, so I went with it.
We need like a third party on the show for like pronunciation of names we can like refer to.
Oh, please. Have you ever heard like Luke Thomas try to pronounce? Oh my God. Don't even get me
started. All
started.
right. Ooh, another interesting fight. Mickey Gall versus Diego Sanchez. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm in absolute shock. Are you telling me that Mickey Gall called out a washed up loser fighter now who's not very good and is trying to act all tough?
He beat Craig White in his last fight. Diego's like, remember we were discussing the definition of like a gatekeeper a few episodes ago? Diego is a gatekeeper at this point.
That's a little nice. He's a little old for that. I hear you.
I mean, didn't he beat Marcin Held? He beat,
How recently?
Well, he beat Craig White in his last fight. If he's turning someone back like that, that's what a gatekeeper does.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. I just, look, I mean, okay, so first...
Who you got is the question. I think we know based on your disrespect.
No, I don't know. I've got Gall.
Well, you think... obviously, you just said that gatekeeper is too good of a term for Diego Sanchez.
I've got Mickey Gall, but I want to also go on record and just say that I think that Gall specializes in calling out people that he really, really wants to bully, that are usually really, match up poorly with him. I'll never forget Gall fighting. Oh my gosh.
Mike Jackson, CM Punk, George Sullivan.
Who did he lose to? No, he lost to a very talented stand-up fighter. That was he wasn't Jamaican. What was he?
Desmond.
It's really bothering me now. I'll have to look it up. But anyways,
you're just staying for Mickey Gall runs deep.
No, I mean I just don't like. I've never been a huge fan of bullies.
He's a kid.
I mean, I've never been a huge fan of bullies.
He also called out
Randy
Dan
Brown.
Hardy.
Randy Brown. He lost to Randy Brown.
Mickey Gall called out Dan Hardy at one point.
Correct.
So you got to take his call-outs with a grain of salt.
Well, I think he was told by his manager, hey, by the way, Dan Hardy's got a heart problem. And he said, oh, he's got a heart problem? Then I want to fight him. Because that's how Gall thinks. Because he's an untalented bully. That's what I think of Gall.
Good for you. I'm taking Gall in this fight, too. By decision. He sure is not going to submit Diego.
God, Gall's such a bitch. I would love to see him get hurt.
Go! What's the next fight?
We're going to go...
Cut that whole segment.
Whoa, easy. Yeah, we don't want to offend all the Mickey Gall fans. We'll lose
Edmund
everyone.
Shabazian, I'm taking. Macy Chasson. Marlon Cheeto Vera versus Frankie Saenz. You got someone different, or are you taking Cheeto Vera?
I got Vera. I got Chiasson. I had Bird over Shabazian. We don't need to go into that though.
Yeah. And then Pauliana Viana's my last pick. We can get into some listener questions if you want.
All right. Let's go ahead and do that. Really quickly, while I've got you, any thoughts on GSP's retirement? What's his legacy? Is he the greatest of all time?
It's clear that GSP is at least a top 3 UFC fighter of all time by any measurement possible. I feel like I've already said goodbye to him 4 years ago after the Hendricks fight. I feel like that was much more of a retirement feeling. He came back for one cherry-picked fight versus Michael Bisping and then left again. It's not like we've had GSP back per se. So I wasn't overly moved by his retirement, but again, he's obviously one of the greats to ever do it in the UFC. Top 3 resumes without a doubt. Arguably the greatest at his weight class ever. So yeah, true class act and one of the masters of the UFC for sure.
All right, very fair. And then let me start off with this listener question from a good friend of the program, TRT Dana. That's at TRT Dana. He said, why do you guys think Dillon Danis received a 7-month suspension when both Conor and Khabib received 6? I know Khabib received a 12-month suspension, but that could be knocked down to 6 if he filmed an anti-bullying PSA. So TRT Dana's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
So my first comment on that is, I don't think you can judge Dillon versus the two combatants, which is Conor and Khabib. You would have to judge his sentence more versus Zubaira and the other guy, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, who were outside of the ring and came in. So these guys are outside. I think they both got 12-month suspensions, correct?
That's correct.
So in regards to exterior influences being Khabib's boys and Conor's boys, I would say Dillon Danis actually got a lesser suspension than Khabib's, counterparts, or I don't know what term you want to use, teammates.
Yeah, teammates. So you're saying that, just so I understand correctly, you're saying Dillon got off light, if anything. This is perfectly fair.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In regards to, the guy's name is Zubaira, correct? Yeah. And the other Khabib teammate, who both got a year. Yep. And I believe how much did they get? $10,000 fines that Khabib paid.
I believe so.
So Dillon got 7 months and $7,500, which is less than both of them. And I think his interaction with that was on par with them, not necessarily Khabib and Conor, who were actually the two competitors that night. You can't really compare his suspension with them, in my opinion.
Okay, so this is fun because I don't know that we've ever disagreed more, frankly. I really don't. I don't know what we...
Well, I'm sure you're right.
I said some sarcasm there, but I have absolutely no idea why Dillon Danis was punished at all. He was defending himself after Khabib...
He was inciting...
Hold on. He was inciting what?
Go out somewhere and start yelling religious slurs at someone.
Do you have any evidence? Do you have any evidence that he said that?
Yes, there is.
No, there's not. No, there's not. I know there's no evidence. I know it's only Khabib's word versus his. They chose to agree with Khabib.
Oh, so
there's no evidence.
Obviously, the courts did not choose to agree. Because the courts gave him punishment as in him inciting some of that.
Well, I'm telling you that there is zero video evidence that he's... I'm not saying he didn't say it, but you've got to prove it too. And there's
what I'm saying is we're not privy to the backdoor negotiations with the lawyers in the athletic commission. So, you don't know what they have proof, who heard what, because that hasn't come out. They settled for these rulings or whatever. You're not going to cut... I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say there. I don't think this is the most unjust thing ever. He certainly played a role in it.
Did you want him to just let himself get punched by Khabib without throwing an elbow back?
But do you think Khabib would have jumped on him for no reason after the fight without being provoked?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Dillon was provoking him prior to the fight, but...
Well, he was provoking him at the end of the fight, which prompted Khabib to jump the fence. He jumped the fence after Dillon Danis. You can't make up facts here.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So you're saying Dillon Danis wasn't inciting anything, yet he incited Khabib to jump over the cage.
How many fans are there? Hang on, let's have a serious talk here. How many fans are there at a UFC event that scream, "You suck, Khabib! You suck, Conor!" Oh, so that now you can get assaulted for that now? Now listen, a lot of people are saying Dillon said anti-Muslim stuff. And that would be reason to get some suspensions. Guess what? Zero evidence of that. None.
Well, whatever, dude.
None.
I'm not going to get into this and debate it with you.
Well, if someone can, by the way, if anyone feels, someone send me some video.
No, it's not about being offended. It's being about, like, what are you defending here? I don't want to argue.
I'm saying Dylan Danis shouldn't be suspended 7 months for getting assaulted outside of a cage and then fighting back. That's what I'm saying.
Well, you can paint it however you want.
Okay, so you think that he was calling him Muslim slurs? That's what you're saying?
Absolutely. You think Dylan Danis is a classy guy who is above...
You're just making assumptions now.
No, you're making assumptions that he did not say something to incite a riot that started.
I trust Luke Thomas and Ariel Helwani saying that there's zero video evidence of such a thing.
Well...
But
apparently, the Nevada State Athletic Commission disagrees. They think that there's 7 months and $7,500 worth of evidence.
All right, fair enough. And if he did, by the way, if he did say, anti-religious stuff,
and again, this isn't even. It's in. Was he a part of that? Yes, he was. Was he not? Was he throwing punches after people jumped at him?
Oh, if anyone jumped me from a cage and started throwing punches, I hope to God I would throw them back, or I would never be able to call myself a man and look in the mirror again.
Well, good for you. What I'm saying is...
What, would you just take the punches?
No, I wouldn't just take the punches, but...
What'd you want him to do? Please,
I don't know.
punch me.
You're painting Dylan as some victim here.
Well,
and again,
I know Dylan's popular to dislike, but I'm just speaking truth.
Well, it's not truth. It's your opinion. Just because there's no evidence doesn't mean it never happened.
Well, if they have no evidence, they can't punish him if they don't have evidence.
But that's what I mean. You're not privy to what evidence was within the case file. Just because Ariel Helwani didn't report it.
Okay, yeah. Your guy Luke Thomas didn't either, but okay. All right.
Sure. You're the one quoting Luke.
All right. Okay, moving on.
Wrap this up. Let's go.
Okay, so. This is from Damon Ling. That's at Ling Damon. That's at LINGGDAMON. He said, Woodley said he's considering going after the 185-pound title. How do you see a fight going between him and Whittaker? I will let you start that off.
Well, I think I saw some comments in the chain I kind of agree with. I think we need to see the health of Robert Whittaker in his return before we kind of can make a judgment on that.
Yeah.
I think stylistically it's an intriguing fight. We've seen in the past Robert be able to handle a guy like Yoel Romero, who's like a much bigger version of Tyron Woodley. But Woodley, I do believe, is a lot more fast twitch, quicker, has more speed. So it'd be super interesting, but if Robert Whittaker was 100%, I still think that he has the style to win that fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think we've got to see what happens. Also, Woodley did say that he is looking to fight Colby Covington after the Usman fight, obviously assuming he wins. So it's not that he's looking at an immediate jump to 185, but possibly 1 or 2 fights away. So I agree we need to see more of him, make sure that he stays healthy before we make that decision. Okay.
And now he needs to defend versus Gastelum or Adesanya. It's going to be clear as day he'll have to fight one of them.
Well,
next.
Of course. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Lewis Foster. That's at Lewis571Lewis. And he said, boring question alert, does heavyweight DC beat heavyweight Jones? And I will go ahead and start.
No, we've talked about this so much. You say yes, I say no. Let's not break this down. John Jones.
Okay, all right, moving on.
Let's roll.
All right, so really quickly wanted to give a very, very important shout out to Smoothie. Smoothie is great. She's one of our absolute favorite fans. She really goes the extra mile. This is at Smoothie251. She's got a surgery coming up. We're all thinking of you, Smoothie. Get better soon, and shout out to you. And then I'm trying to see if we've got any last-minute listener questions. Did we cover them all?
I don't know. I didn't see any other ones.
You haven't been very helpful with the listener
I
questions.
apologize. It's been a busy week.
Okay. I feel like there's one more that we're... Oh, okay, wait. There's one more that I really think is important to tackle. This is from Kenneth Robert at Mr. _T Tiddlewinks. He says, do you guys think we've seen the last of the blessed era at 145? What do you think of the winner of Poirier versus Holloway potentially getting a direct title shot over the number 1 and number 2 ranked fighters in the division? So I know we addressed part of this already,
right,
but I definitely want to, let me start off with this. Do you think we've seen the last of the blessed era at 145?
I believe that depends on the outcome of the next fight. If he loses versus Dustin Poirier, I believe he'll be back at 145 100%. If he beats Dustin Poirier, that will open doors for him to fight a Conor McGregor or a Khabib, or a Khabib fight in the future. So I don't think there's as much reason for him to go back at that point. So it really does depend on how this next fight goes, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Very hard to disagree with any of that. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for today. Fight Geek, take it away.
All right, guys, as usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Soundcloud, YouTube, Stitcher, and Buzzsprout. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil, the MMA dude. We're at Split_podcast. It's 4 words, the Split Decision Podcast. Find us on iTunes. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Peace.
Peace.